Good morning. I'd like to welcome everyone to the June 29th, 2021 meeting of the Rutherford County Regional Planning Commission. If you would stand with us, please. Commissioner Chip Pinion will lead us in our prayer and our pledge. Chip.
Let's pray. Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for loving us. We thank you for the opportunity to come and serve our great county today, Father. We pray that as we meet, you would give us wisdom, knowledge, and understanding that we need to handle the decisions that we have to make this morning. Just help us to do it in the best interest of our great county, and continue to guide and direct us in the days to come as we leave here today. Father, we ask you to be with all those that protect our great county, protect our great land. Just comfort them, be with their families today. Keep them out of harm's way. Father, again, we just thank you for all that you do for us. There's not one of us here that can't be very thankful to you for all that you've done for us, and we continue to give you that thanks day in and day out. Forgive us where we fail you. Thank you again for this time today. In Jesus' name, amen. I pledge allegiance.
Call the roll, please, Gail.
Charlotte P. Chip Pinion. Here. Craig Lynch. David Jones. Jim Averwater. Here. Lee Bogle. Marvin Whitworth. Here. Mike Cush.
Present.
Pettis Reed.
Here.
Rhonda Allen. Here. Jeff Phillips.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Gail. We have no minutes to approve for this morning, and we have no items that have been deferred or withdrawn. And for those of you who are not familiar with this face second to my right, that's Sheila Huffmeyer. She's filling in for Mike today. I think Mike is visiting Orlando, Florida, and spending some couch time with a mouse, I understand. Okay, getting into our agenda. Item 6 is new business. 6A, we have two items on our waiver request. 6A1, item number is 21-4003. Deborah Trotter is requesting a waiver to allow a property of less than 5 acres to be accessed with a 50-foot access easement, for property located at 4673 and 4695 Jones Road. Doug?
Have the mic. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. The applicant who is present owns property along Jones Road. This property, as you can see on the map on the screen before you, does contain 2 separate tracts. Each tract does contain 1 house. Well, they want to split it that way. It's two houses on 1 tract right now. They want to split it. They would like to split it due to some financing issues, and I'll let the applicant speak more to that. They would like to utilize an existing 50-foot easement to access the one in the back, which is 4695. That easement is actually located on the, as you're looking at the property from the road, it'd be on the right-hand side. As you're looking at the map, it'd be on the left-hand side. We met with the applicant and suggested maybe the possibility of looking at a flag lot type situation from the road. Information provided by the applicant stated that due to the septic location, utility location, everything, putting like a flag lot type situation as you're looking at it on the map on the right-hand side along Jones Road probably wasn't going to be a very good option. So after discussing it, we said that, well, you can ask for using that easement. However, you are going to have to ask for a waiver to the provision that would require you to have it at 5 acres, being off a private easement like that. Tracts are required to be on a private easement, required to be at least 5 acres in size. So this will be below that. There is a fire hydrant that pretty much in front of the property, so that's not going to be an issue. It really is just the size of the property in relation to the requirements for a 5-acre tract off a 50-foot private easement. So, like I said, the applicant is present and can speak more about the situation, but with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Doug, what would be the acreage on that?
I think it's going to be about 3. What's the overall acreage on that, Sheila? This, yeah. It's 5.61, yeah. The overall tract is a little over 5 acres, about 5.5, roughly. So if they split it the way she's talking about splitting, it'd probably be around 2.5 to 3 acres, roughly is what you'd be looking at. Of course, if this is subdivided, or if this is approved, then they have to do a subdivision. Of course, this would have to be platted because it'd be less than 5 acres, just so everybody's aware of that.
Doug, do you see any potential future issues with between neighbors somewhere down the road? Any kind of potential legal disputes or anything?
This, I don't think so. I mean, just from the review we did of it, it seems fairly straightforward, quite frankly. I mean, you know, you never can sit here and say that it's never going to happen, but just this isn't terribly different than others we've looked at. Okay. The applicant can speak if you like.
Sorry?
The applicant's present if you want to speak.
Yes, sir. Or yes, ma'am. Sorry.
You would state your name and address for the record, please.
Deborah Trotter, 4673 Jones Road, Christiana.
Thank you, ma'am.
The 50-foot right-of-way that we are speaking about was set up for use for 4 properties. The 2 street addresses is already using it on the right, and there's a 30-acre tract owned by Miss Jenny Justice. Y'all probably know her. She owns a rock quarry at Burnt Knob. She owns 30 acres back there that's landlocked. So they set this 50-foot up for that property, the 2 properties on the right where somebody's living, and our property in the back. The original owner of 4695, the old house on our property, used that right-of-way for a while. And then he decided he wanted to put his own driveway in. So, but it's there, it's fenced. It's been fenced from day one. And the lady that lives over on the right side uses it every day. And her water line is in that right of way. That's what it's set up for. My deed, when I bought this property, references also conveyed is the right to use the non-exclusive easement or right-of-way for ingress, egress, and utility lines or pipelines described in deed book. We don't have any need for utilities to go there. We already have power in the back to that house that goes along our other property line. We tried to refinance, and no mortgage company will refinance a property with 2 dwellings on it. And it has to be split in order to do that. And we're not looking to sell, we're not looking to subdivide, we're just looking to get something on paper for the mortgage company that helps us. We rent that house out. My stepdaughter lives there. So it's a family situation. And I'm just trying to do what I thought I bought in my deed originally. And I'm just trying to exercise my right, because everybody else is exercising their right on the right side. And anybody got any questions? I mean, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Any questions for Ms. Trotter?
Ms. Trotter, so you'll be, what the plans are right here, this will work for you?
Yes, it will. And I've already got a surveyor. Of course, you got to get on his schedule. And it took me about 6 calls to get on the end of July somebody's schedule. And of course, we did all our soil work and everything when we built the new house. We enlarged it for both houses, and all that was met way back. So we don't have anything except I just need to get y'all's approval so I can get a survey and something that'll make y'all happy.
Mr. Chairman, if there's not anything else to come forward, I make the motion to approve this change.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 21-4003 for Deborah Trotter. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you, Ms. Trotter, for being here. Item 6A2, 21-4004, Gary Mark Stacy and Francis Stacy are requesting a waiver for a non-buildable lot for property located at 10955 Old Lebanon Road. Doug?
That's fine. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant is proposing to add some property to Lot 1, which is what Sheila had just highlighted there, where the existing house is. Now, you can tell by looking at the aerial photo, it looks like that property line kind of splits the back of that portion of that structure. Now, I will say that this isn't a survey-accurate situation, so I'm not exactly sure where that line falls, but I think there is some sort of issue there. So they are wanting to add a little bit of land to that. The situation that they're running into is the adjacent tract was left off the original plat that was done, even though it was less than 5 acres. Now, this was done back in the 90s, the mid-90s. It is what it is. The tract itself, where the house is located, is part of a plat. The issue that we're running into is, okay, you're going to add some land to that, but you're still going to have a remainder of less than 5 acres. That would have to be on the plat. The applicant has no intention at this point, of doing any development on that tract, so there's no soils that have been identified. So what they're asking for is the ability to do the subdivision plat, but just leave that as an undeveloped or undevelopable tract until soils can be identified at some future date. If that is the case, where they decide to do that, they would have to do an amendment plat at that point after they find the soil on the property. So really, the waiver they're asking for is just to create that remainder on the plat as a non-buildable lot until some future date. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions on this.
Staff have a recommendation, Doug?
I personally don't have any real issue with it. I think it's fine.
Very good. We have a motion and a second to approve item 21-4004 for Gary Mark Stacy and Francis Stacy. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. Item 6B, we have one item submitted for preliminary plan approval. Item 6B1, 21-1009, States of Burleson, 13 lots on 13.45 acres zoned RM located along Burleson Lane. Bert McCarter is the applicant. Doug?
Yes, sir. Thank you. The preliminary plan for this development was actually originally approved by the Planning Commission back in April of 2019. No work ever began, and plan has since expired, so basically what they're doing is they're bringing it back through. Their plan is to construct 13 lots on this property. You may recall when we originally approved this back in 2019, they were granted a waiver to allow the detention pond on one of the residential lots, not as a separate lot. Of course, we do require that on the separate lots now under our current subdivision regulations, as we did, again, back in 2019. But that was approved at the time, and they're asking for that same waiver as part of this plan submittal. Most of our comments, pretty much all of them really, have been addressed. There's a couple things we'll look at as it progresses through construction drawings, like coordinating ADA parking stall availability for the mail kiosk area. But beside that, the plan in and of itself is in good order. So with that, if anybody has any questions, I'll be more than happy to take them.
Good with it.
Yeah, like I said, it's pretty much unchanged from when it was approved before.
Make a motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Staff suggested with staff comments. Is that okay, Chip? Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve item 21-1009, Estates of Burleson. Any other questions or comments? Charlotte?
That stormwater pond is on 8,
Correct. I think so. Do you have the plan you can bring it up?
and that landowner will be aware and has to maintain that?
It'll be built in. It'll be built into the to their deed and part of the plat. I mean, they'll have to be aware that it is. Yes.
Other questions? All those in favor of the approval, please say aye. Any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. Item 6C, we have two items submitted for final plat approval. 6C1, the item number is 21-2036, Joshua and Jessica Fan subdivision, one lot on .69 acres zoned RM, located along Spantown Road. Joshua and Jessica Fan are the applicants. Includes a waiver to the fire hydrant distance requirements and off-site septic easement. Doug?
Yes, thank you. The applicant is proposing to divide approximately .7 acres from a 10-acre tract. The existing barn that's on the property will be removed and a house constructed at a future time. There is existing septic soil on the proposed lot, but they also will need to rely on a soil easement for the backup area on the remaining acreage. The applicant has also received verification from Nolansville College Grove that the water line will not support a hydrant, so the plat in and of itself is pretty straightforward, but they are asking for two waivers. One, the waiver to the fire hydrant requirement, and then two, the septic easement for the backup area for the soil. So the plat, like I said, in and of itself, beyond the waivers, has been addressed to meet our comments. So with that, we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Fire hydrant waiver, would that require any type of safety features built into the house? Such
Not
as
for
sprinklers?
just a one-lot subdivision, no, sir.
Thank you, Doug.
Question, Mr. Chairman.
Fine.
To Doug, when you have a situation like this where you have a backup plan for soil easement, do you usually get a letter of acceptance or approval or allowance from that neighboring property owner that they've reached some agreement, or I mean, do you have an assurance from that property owner that they've agreed that they will?
What would have to happen, now do I have anything in the file right now? No. What would have to happen is they would have to have something on both the deeds, one for the lot that's being created, and then a second one on the remaining acreage, that there is some sort of an easement there. Now that's a good question. I mean, that's something we'll have to verify to make sure, I mean, based on what we're being told, that is the case. But having some verification of that, just for their sake, really, is pretty vital. Yeah.
Doug, this plan is a little confusing to me, but the property line comes between the house and the current barn. That's just an awful small lot for the future. That's a really small lot, really close to the existing home.
Well, and like I said, the barn is to be removed, and I mean, that does give them an adequate building envelope for a house. Now, granted, they are, fairly close, but they are separated at least by the 10-foot setback on each side, which is what would be allowed to happen even in a traditional, just a regular subdivision. So, I mean, it's no closer than what the code would allow. Let me see something. And I will say this, looking at the plat, the remaining acreage is actually part of the owners, Joshua and Jessica Fan, own the remaining acreage as well as the lot. So as far as, back to your question, Mr. Cush, right now, if they ever sell that, then obviously they're going to, this plat will kind of be controlling and binding on whoever buys it.
Thank you, Jim. We have a motion and a second to approve item 21-2036 for Joshua and Jessica Fan subdivision. Other questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion to approve, please say aye. Opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. 6C. C2, item number 21-2041, Jeremy R. Camoglia, one-lot subdivision, one lot on 19.18 acres, zoned RL, located along Bradyville Highway. Jeremy R. Camoglia is the applicant, includes waiver of a 50-foot private easement requirements and a fire hydrant waiver. Doug?
Yes, sir, thank you. The applicant was granted a waiver for accessing a new lot on a less than a 50-foot access easement at the Planning Commission's February 22nd, 2021 meeting just a few months ago. This plan that you see before you, the plat, is consistent with that request. Most of our comments have been addressed. One of the comments, however, was that the question, since they're creating this new lot off a subdivision plat, is whether or not the lot was going to be within 1,000 feet of a fire hydrant. The applicant has submitted a request to CUD, but it has not been acted on yet. But staff would be comfortable if the Planning Commission would desire to grant this subject to that determination. If the determination is made that a hydrant can be placed, they'll go ahead and place it. But if not, then the waiver would just be included as part of the approval. But all of our other comments have been addressed on this. We'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Doug.
Doug, just to be clear, it appears that there is an existing house and a gravel driveway, so this is kind of a flag lot, and then that gravel driveway extends across this lot and accessing another piece of property.
That's right.
So this will be an easement. And how many homes would be on
You
this
can have,
easement? How many
yeah, you can have up
properties?
to 3 off a private easement, and this, creating it like this, they're still within, we looked at that when we looked at the waiver request, so this would still be, creating this lot still be okay.
Doug, are there, off the flag entrance, are there developed lots yet on either side of that?
They're just big acreage tracts. I believe there's another house a little further down. Yeah, you can see that 9738 right there.
Okay.
That's pretty much, I think it goes a little further to the south, but that's, yeah, right there. I think that's the extent of how far it goes.
Okay, so is this easement a new easement for what would become this flag lot, or is this an old?
It's kind of a little, it's creating, the fact that he wants to create this lot, it necessitated the need for the easement to continue through it. So it's kind of existing, but creating the new lot was going to create another lot on the easement, which is kind of what,
okay,
for the remaining acreage. So that's kind of what.
This would never have to be upgraded to a county standard?
No, sir.
All right, and though, if this land becomes developable lots, there would be some language that all the owners would have to pitch in to maintain the roadway?
At that point, right. I don't foresee that happening, but if, like you said, in the future, if that would ever happen, we probably would just say that needs to be a public road, and a lot of these issues would then go away as far as easements.
And I'm curious, Doug, what triggers that kind of language, and where does that appear? Do you have?
Well, there is language about that in the subdivision regulations.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. I would make a motion to approve with staff comments.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve final plat for item 21-2041, Jerry R. Camoglia, one-lot subdivision. Other questions or comments?
I just want to clarify, you said that we're doing this without a CUD letter.
Right.
If there is a hydrant available, or if it's feasible to put a hydrant, there will be a hydrant, and if it's not, then we're approving a waiver.
Yes. But if it comes back and they say, yes, it can support a hydrant, we'll make sure that's, before we'll sign off on it, we'll make sure it's paid for, because that's generally what we do in that situation. As long as it's paid for and they have a receipt, we know it's going to be installed, we'll let them record it at that point.
again. All those in favor, excuse me, all those in favor of the motion to approve, please say aye. Any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. Item 6D, submitted for site plan approval. 6D1, item 21-3012, Murfreesboro Pool Company, construction of 39,600 square feet, 3 buildings of construction, sales, and service use, zoned CG and CS, located along Old Nashville Highway. Donald Bruce is the applicant. Doug.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Just as a way of history, the Board of Commissioners rezoned a portion of this property to commercial services back in April of this year. Remaining property was already zoned commercial general. That was approved a couple of years back. The applicant is proposing to construct this pool company, with the remaining property being utilized in the future for retail and small office spaces. We did send numerous comments to the design engineer, Mr. Huddleston, who is present today to discuss this. Since we wrote these comments, and I kind of updated these a little bit yesterday before I sent out the link to the revised plans, the scope of this project has changed pretty considerably. You can see the plan that's on your, well, it's on your iPads, but it's also on the screen behind us right now. Originally, it wasn't just going to be the pool company, which is in the back, but there you can see kind of ghosted out toward the front. There was 3 different buildings in the front. A lot of the comments that we had actually were because of those 3 buildings in the front. There was a lot of issues and concerns that staff had about that. One of them being the need for a traffic study. There were some additional drainage concerns and things like that. We met with the applicants, the applicant and his design engineer, Mr. Huddleston, last week, last Wednesday, to discuss this, and the decision was made that as of right now, the applicant's real need right now is just for the pool company in the back. So they decided everything else is going to be just for future development. So that's why those buildings have been ghosted out. Now, a lot of the comments, like I said, related to those 3 buildings in front. So a majority of the comments that we had kind of became moot at that point. There are still some comments that need to be addressed. For instance, the plan is still showing, like when you're looking at that box in the upper left corner, they're still showing quite a bit of site detail, but it includes all the buildings, not just the first phase that they're building. Everything else would be future. They would need to update that. There's also a few engineering things that they need to update, and I'll let Sheila get into some of those. But for the most part, the plan has been revised per the concerns and the comments that we had. After Sheila goes through anything that she may have, if the Planning Commission is acceptable, we think the comments that remain we can handle kind of administratively before any permits are issued. Let's make sure the plan gets updated. But if you would rather defer action, that's fine. But we're comfortable, I think, after really looking at the plan, that most of the comments are either moot at this point because of the buildings being taken off, or can be handled just by staff over the next few weeks. So I'll let Sheila discuss any engineering comments if you wanted to talk about any comments. Okay, she didn't have anything further. So with that, we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Doug, you mentioned, I think you mentioned ingress and egress was part of the earlier discussion with
traffic
design
study,
engineer.
correct? Yes, sir.
Right. So regardless whether they're developing those 3 buildings now or in the future, your curb cut or your road cut into the property is going to be the same.
Yes.
So I guess does just developing the backside for the pool part not warrant a traffic study? I mean, where does the break come?
Well, and Mr. Huddleston did some preliminary traffic analysis and said that if you built all the buildings, that would warrant the full traffic study. For the amount of traffic that'll be coming in and out of just the pool company, I don't think, and Bill may speak more to this, it's going to be more, the traffic that comes in and out. I don't think it's so much retail. It's more construction, their crews coming in and out, really, is what it is. So there's just not a whole lot of just in and out traffic all day long kind of a thing. So while you're right, the access in and of itself is proposed where it is. That isn't proposing to change based on the amount of trips that they anticipate. Just with the pool company, it didn't rise to the level of the full traffic study.
Okay, I guess I'm putting my common sense hat on. If you're going to have to make improvements to the roadway to enter the property, right?
Correct.
Turn lane, ingress, egress. You know you're going to develop at some point in time the front part of the property, which then would trigger a traffic study, right?
Correct.
Or is this one of those cat and mouse games where you do the pool part, it doesn't warrant a traffic study, and now a year later you do the front part and you don't count the back part, and so the front part doesn't warrant a traffic study? Is that how you skin the cat?
Not necessarily. We would look at the entire property, the existing traffic that's coming in and out of there, as well as the proposed traffic. You just don't look at it kind of in a vacuum.
Okay.
Yeah, so whenever they were to come in with those front buildings, we would say, okay, you need to factor in the trips that are being made with what's already there. And then, so they wouldn't be looking at it just for like each individual building or anything like that. It would be as a whole. What we'd require.
I guess my question really is, does it not make more sense, knowing that you are going to develop that front property likely in the near future, to go ahead and do a traffic study and make those improvements all at one time while you're cutting your curb, getting your permits to I don't know what that main road is, but
Old Nashville Highway.
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you do it all at one time? I would think that would be more cost effective than to do part now and then part later.
Right. Well, and it looks like Mr. Huddleston is coming up to speak, if that's okay with you, Mr. Phillips.
Yes, it is. Come on up, Bill.
It does, sort of. Good morning, Chairman Phillips, members of the Planning Commission. I'm Bill Huddleston with Huddleston Steel Engineering. Yeah, we originally showed the pool company in back. That's what this guy is. He's a pool contractor. I think he's really a subcontractor, the way he explained his business. He was buying a lot of acreage. He thought in the future he might develop some office warehouse between the pool company and Old Nashville Highway, but on the very front, he was looking at about a 14,000 square foot retail center. So when we did a trip generation memorandum to see what kind of traffic were generated, the pool company doesn't generate much traffic at all, as Doug said. The middle buildings, which are office warehouse, kind of like on Thompson Lane where say the Soils Group office is, that doesn't generate a lot of traffic either. It's when you put that 14,000 square foot retail center on there, that's when you start generating the traffic. Like I said, this guy's a pool company guy. That's what he wants to get going. He's not worried about the other stuff so much right now. But your rule is that once you generate over 100 peak hour trips, a traffic study's warranted, and that didn't met with the pool company. It didn't met with those middle buildings, but it certainly met with that 14,000 square foot retail building. So he understands all this. He knows we have to do a traffic study if he goes forward with the front stuff. What that traffic study would really be looking at are what kind of turn lanes would be required on Old Nashville Highway. The access itself, we're showing a 24-foot wide access. When he goes to develop any more, he probably needs to make that a 36-foot wide access, so that would be the improvement on site. And we do a traffic study to see what kind of turn lanes would be required at that point. Thank you.
So then, Doug, I'm curious, let's assume, if we're talking down the road in the future, that these additional 3 or 4 buildings were platted as office space or warehouse type space. And a traffic study was done based upon it being warehouse space. And then the front of it was converted to retail sometime after the buildings were constructed and approved. And then there's no traffic study. The traffic study was done based upon warehouses, but now it's going to become retail. Is that a possibility, or is there some sort of check valve?
Well, for what you're talking about, it goes beyond just the traffic. Parking requirements too change quite a bit if you're going from like an office use to a retail use. So they might have to make additional site improvements because of that. I think we would catch it at that point as well. They didn't. I don't think, from a zoning standpoint, could they come in and do it? They could, but they would have to get permits. They'd have to, at the change of use, occupancies and different things like that. And if they had to change parking requirements and those kind of things, we would see that. And then at that point say, hey, if you're going from office to retail, that changes everything. You're going to have to do this traffic study right now to see if improvements would be necessary. So I think, to answer your question, there's enough check valves in place that we would be able to catch something like that if it did happen.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Doug.
Rhonda.
Doug, knowing that we're anticipating that there could be future development on that front area, I can't tell, do we have the dedicated right-of-way for a dedicated turn lane if one does need to be added in the future?
I believe as of right now, I'm not entirely, I think it's a 50-foot right-of-way looking at it. Now, if there had to be some right-of-way dedication, it would just be something they would dedicate as part of their site. So I don't think that'd be anything I'd necessarily be concerned with. But that's what we have right now. But I think we'd have the opportunity to get more from them because it'd be part of their improvements that they'd have to make on their site. So
currently we don't have sufficient for a dedicated turn lane, but you think if they come back to ask for that, we could ask for that at that point? Is that what you're saying?
Well, that'd be part of their improvement. So that would just be part and parcel of that. So yeah.
For the next phase, for
Correct.
The future phase.
Correct. I mean, it's going to be their property regardless. So anything they would make would probably be on their side. So that would just be part of, say, turn lane, dedicate a little right away for it. Yeah.
And then my other question is, are there any drainage concerns? Because I know we have a lot of drainage issues on Old National Highway. We have traffic issues on Old National Highway. So
Right.
Those are the two hot buttons that I'm looking at this site plan for.
Right.
So are there any drainage issues?
The only thing that we had looked at from drainage was making sure that all the water drained through the pond. And it was just some simple elevation change, curb cut changes, to get everything to go through the ponds. So when we said that there was like oh my gosh, always drainage issues. Said there was any issues, it was just to make sure that the curb cuts and the way they routed the water from the parking lots were to get through the pond. So that was what we were talking about when we said drainage issues. Other than that, we didn't see any issues with with this project and the drainage out there. Let's see, I can show I think some of the issues are way back here on these other areas where they had some flooding. So as those areas develop, we would be definitely more concerned about that. We have had a few things come through out there, and we've been very diligent with those plans that came in. Let's see. I know Mike likes to show you all kinds of fun pictures, right? I'm not as fun as Mike. Yeah. So see, they're over here. And some of the flood areas was kind of way over here. I think this is the Buddhist right there, just so you can kind of get your bearings. Yeah, they own all of this. And this was all Don Bruce's property through here. Let me see the subdivision layer. Yeah, we haven't. It's all separate.
So help me out here. Where is the outflow for this detention pond? It appears that you're putting it in a low place on the lot and then having to go even lower, another 4 or 5 feet lower.
So here's let me make it a little bit bigger for you. Well, we have a blow up of it. So everything will route through pipes from the front of the property. They're going to go ahead and put those pipes in right now. And I'll show you that on the next sheet. And then they'll come through here. And then the outlet will be right here for the pond. So it'll go through the pond. It'll be released at the same rate or less as what was coming out there before. And they have also allowed for the bypass flow to come through. So there's flow coming from the tract, I guess as you guys are kind of looking at it, to the east, or to your kind of, if you're looking at it from the road, to the right. So we've got a ways to get the bypass flow coming from this property on. So we won't be blocking any flow from the properties upstream of that. And then they'll be allowed to slowly release it to the properties kind of going to the west of that. And then so they're going to go ahead and put these inlets in, as you can see here. And then that's going to route all the water through the pond. So it won't just be sheet flowing or ponding. It shouldn't be flooding or gathering any kind of water or causing stagnant water on this upper side. And because you can see all this hashed out portions here are their septic soils, so they don't want to cause any kind of flooding on those, because they could actually ruin their future septic soils, which is like, you know, kind of gold in Rutherford County, to get those nice good soils so you can have bathrooms and water. So they'll be protecting all of that and routing it appropriately through the ponds. And then if they were to come in and kind of, like Doug said, if they were to come back and change the footprint, change the size, change anything like that, they also have to reevaluate the ponds. But they've designed it for the whole site. So they took everything into consideration. So basically they'll do the whole drainage build out on the front end. Not the traffic, but the drainage. So we did go ahead and say, if you're going to hash these out, we'd like for you to go ahead and put the pipes in. And they're like, yeah, we want to also, because we don't want our soils to be affected and we don't want our site to flood. So that's kind of those sheets. If you want me to just kind of scroll through these, I can. Just so y'all can kind of see the site plans. They came in yesterday at about noon. So I got to look at them at about 3:30. But I think we're in pretty good shape. And whatever else we have, Bill's great. He'll work with us on getting our staff comments adjusted. They've got their stormwater sheets in. We've got the landscaping. They've adjusted their landscaping to match. They're going to have the solid fence with the appropriate buffers, and I think Doug's pretty pleased with that. So we don't have any issues there. We did have them do a couple of turning movements. So they have a garbage truck turning movement on here to show how they're going to get in and out of the property. You can see there's another building on the back here. And then this is going to be their lay-down yard for their fiberglass pools. So what they do is the fiberglass insets come to them, like the big insets, and then they store them on the back of their lot, and then they actually go out and do the installs. So that's mostly what their company does. So they'll be able to get their trucks in here, and then this will all be storage, and then, you know, they've got their dumpster pads and such in the back. And then they also put a fire truck turning move on there to show how the fire trucks would be able to get in and out if they were to have an emergency. And then these are just like the photometrics. So, are there any other questions? Go back to the kind of the main page.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion and a second to approve site plan for 21-3012 Murfreesboro Pool Company. Other questions or comments? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye. Any opposition? The motion to approve carries. Thank you. Item 7 is staff reports. Doug, I believe you have something?
Just briefly, We've discussed this in the past when it comes to potential amendments to our zoning regarding outdoor parking and storage of major recreation equipment, but also cargo containers used for personal storage. I was hoping to have some proposed regulations for you today, but unfortunately, I don't think they're quite ready yet. But just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. The thing with the cargo containers that we've talked about in the past has to do with those Connex structures that you're starting to see kind of around. I think there are ways that we might be able to kind of coexist with them depending on how they're installed and maybe some design treatments to a certain extent that we could look at so they just don't look like like a box on the ground kind of a thing. We have done some study on some other areas and, like I said, have come up with some draft regulations, but they still need a little love, so to speak. The thing with the major recreational equipment and cargo containers, that has to do with some tweaks we want to make to the ordinance regarding the number of trailers and things on properties, boats, RVs, those kind of things. The way our ordinance is currently worded right now, it kind of leaves it open to some interpretation. We want to kind of take care of some of that. Like I said, I was hoping to have some of that for you today, but just be on the lookout for that. Hopefully by our day meeting next month, I'll be able to have something for you. The other thing I did want to talk about while I've got the microphone is we had our PUD study committee meeting just back on the 21st. I guess that was about 10 days ago or so, roughly. Well, a week or so ago. And it was very well attended. We had representatives there from the design engineering community. We had utilities present. We had, of course, county staff was there. We had the fire department there. A lot of good discussion, I thought, and some different things that we're going to start looking at. We've started looking at some PUD regulations for the communities that immediately surround us, and we're going to start working on some potential draft amendments. Some ideas that kind of came out of the session, and Marvin was present, so he can certainly chime in with any comments that I may miss or forget about. But some of the more major ideas that came out of this is the potential of looking at maybe a sliding scale of open space versus the size of the lot. The smaller the lot, the more open space you'd be required. If you have a PUD and it's, let's say you've got like a 10 to 15,000 square foot lot, maybe you're only required to do a certain amount of open space less than what we currently require right now, 10% across the board. Maybe if you look at 10 to 15,000, that's maybe 5%. I'm just throwing numbers out there. We haven't come up with anything yet, but 5%. But the smaller the lot goes, the more open space is required. That was something that was discussed. The possibility of increased road width for on-street parking was discussed as well. That was another big issue. We talked about lot width and what the utilities, especially CUD, would need, especially if you want to the ability to swap a driveway from one side of the lot to the other. The minimum requirements or something like that. Setbacks were an issue as well. Do we look at some kind of a standard setback for all planned developments, or do we look at it from a sliding scale standpoint as well? So those are some of the more major items we looked at. The possibility as well as requiring underground utilities just across the board for all subdivisions was something that was brought up as well. So again, just a little kind of whet your appetite a little bit. These are things that we're going to be delving into a little bit more. So just wanted to kind of give you an update that. And Marvin, if I've missed anything, please feel free to chime in. So be happy to answer any questions that anybody may have on that.
You did well, Mr. DeMasi.
Thank you.
Is that it?
Unless there's questions, I believe that's all we have.
Our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, July the 12th. That'll be a 6 p.m. meeting. Any other questions or comments? Mike?
Yes.
I know you sent an email, I think, out several weeks ago requesting...
Use your mic. Sorry.
Use your mic, Mike?
Yeah.
I think Michael sent out an email several weeks ago, maybe requesting some interviews?
Right.
Or
Yes. Now, I think he's pretty much interviewed everybody on the planning commission. Is that right? Is everybody, Mike, were you
I
interviewed?
can't remember.
Chip, you haven't been? Okay, I'll get with him. Marvin, you haven't been either? Okay, well, if Chip and Marvin, if anybody else hasn't, let me know, and I'll get with him on that. Actually, he's going to be here tomorrow and Thursday. He's got several interviews set up with the rest of the county commission, those who aren't on the planning commission, to basically do the same thing he did with you all, those that he was able to get with. So that's where we are with that right now. He'll be in the next couple of days doing face-to-face interviews, and he's set up a virtual interview with I know at least one commissioner who wasn't going to be able to make a meeting here. So that'll be complete by the end of this week.
Yep. Monday, the 12th, 6 p.m. Your public hearing meeting.
Yeah, we're going to have 4 items on the commission. Actually, all of them are going to be plan developments. So just so you're all aware.
Anything else? Thank you for your participation and your attendance. We are adjourned.